WWDC goes virtual, more or less, and Elon Musk tries to buy Twitter. This is MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by MacVoices After Dark. Uncensored, off-topic, and always off the wall. MacVoices After Dark is available as a benefit to our Patreon subscribers. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is the second in a series of MacVoices live sessions that I missed because of some travel, but the panel carried on. This time, they took a look at the announcement of Apple's WWDC and also all the furor surrounding Elon Musk and Twitter. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking.
Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I am Dave Ginsburg, filling in for Chuck Joyner this week, who is on vacation. Hope you're having a great time, Chuck. It's Tuesday night. This is MacVoices Live, and we are live on YouTube at, unfortunately, a different URL, youtube.com/DaveG65. We had a bit of a technical difficulty with the channel, so you'll have to be viewing that. If you are viewing us live, and you know you see us, I see us, some folks in the chat. Let's see, Webb and Paul, and we're glad you're here. We would love to have you join us in the chat, so please join us if you are hearing this, and we have, like I said, many friends here as it is. Tonight we have a few great items to talk about, including Apple did announce WWDC actually today as we're recording the show this week, as well as big stories like the Wise Cam security flaw and Elon Musk decided to buy a lot of Twitter. But there will be some more chats as well. But let's go around the room and see who's here for this week. I'll go in the order of my screen here. First up, Mr. Frank Petrie. How you doing, Frank?
Petrie?
Petrie.
How you doing, Frank?
How you doing, Frank?
Hi, Frank.
Fruit tree. Well, thank you, David Smith.
Yes.
I'm so pleasant, so happy to be here.
I'm pleasant to be here too.
Yeah.
Actually, at this point, I'm happy to be anywhere.
And also here, Mr. Jeff Gamet. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing great, and apparently my diction is better than both of yours.
Okay.
Thank God you said diction.
That's got to be bleeped out.
I don't think that's what he said.
I got worried at first.
Yeah.
And also here, Jim Ray. How you doing, Jim?
Hey, how you doing?
Glad you're here. And Warren Sklar's back before his vacation. How you doing, Warren?
Last day of being able to probably be online. I'm good. I'm going to Aruba for the second time. The last time we went was nearly 2 years ago today, and it was Wednesday. We were lying on the beach, and phones were ringing, and somebody said something about Tom Hanks, and then somebody else said something about the basketball stopping, and then people just started, like, you heard rumbles and mutters and things like that, and then the guy was fighting with his wife, who were co-business owners, of whether they should close the office or not. And we're looking at each other in the beach like, what's going on? So anyways, we're going back. And hopefully it will be a better story when we return.
So
in the hour after that,
it's all your fault.
Yeah, exactly.
It was my fault. So yeah. So the good news is if we get down there, you don't have to test to go down there. You have to test to come back. So if I catch it, today, then I could still get down there. And if I have it down there, then more Aruba. Yeah, what can you do?
And Guy Searle is here. How are you doing, Guy?
I'm doing just fine. I'm going on vacation too next week.
Oh.
Except no place quite like that. I'm going to Birmingham, Alabama.
Nice.
To see the first USFL game.
See the first what?
USFL.
Yeah, my son might get into that too. Isn't that the one that tried?
Yeah, back in the 80s and failed miserably. But I've got my Washington Federals jersey.
But then there was another one that was bought out by like the Rock. Was it the Rock who bought out the league?
The XFL.
This isn't football voices.
Yeah, and I've got my Washington Sentinels jersey on.
Yeah,
quarterback Falco, if anybody remembers what that's from.
My son has New York Guardians, which is another spin-off football team happening around here.
Dave, thanks for dropping a hint. So I had some idea what they were talking about.
This is football, and this is not football voices. This is Mac voices, and we're going to move on and let's go to our first story this
Now
week.
we're gonna
And
talk baseball.
this is Apple announced today as we record live. Announced their digital WWDC. The event is taking place on June 6th through the 10th. It's the 33rd annual conference. And again, it's not going to be in person. It's going to be digital or virtual. So, of course, they started doing that at the pandemic in 2020. And Apple seems to think it's in good spirit to continue this on. And I'm sure they'll have the keynote on Monday, and as we always expect. Jim, you being the developer, what do you think? Is this going to? Are you got some excitement so far? I know there's still pretty fresh news here with developing. Anything for this year? Obviously, we know the obvious: Mac OS, iOS.
Yeah, somebody was predicting they'll have a new version of Mac OS and iOS. Yeah, it's very fresh. I think I just got the email about 3 hours ago.
Yep.
Kind of the interesting twist is they're saying they're going to have a small one-day in-person event. And it's not clear to me if that's going to be in the Jobs Theater, or somebody was saying it was going to be outside, but it's going to be at Apple Park anyway. And I guess it sounds like they're going to have a big watch party that a small group of people will be invited to watch the keynote and the State of the Union, which is the afternoon presentation,
right,
for developers. So they haven't announced anything about, how someone would apply to go to this in-person thing. I've already seen some, people on Twitter like, well, or, are we going to, go in person, whether we get in or not? And
Here's what I found.
Thank you, Siri.
What was that?
Hey,
I think Siri was getting upset that you might.
Only the
Wow.
hoi polloi will be attending this year.
was that
Yeah.
one of my devices? Because I don't even ever use Siri.
I think Siri said, "Jim, you're giving out too much info. Shut up."
Mhm.
Oh yeah, it was my watch. Why did my watch do that?
Don't make me kill you.
It'd be interesting to see if they, I haven't heard anything about AltConf. If are they gonna have an event now?
An even smaller group will be at AltCon.
Yeah.
3 people.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to do it for 3 people. I think I've mentioned this before. AltConf's a great event, and in the before times, I was one of the I'll go to AltConf even if I don't get a ticket, and even if I do get a ticket, I'm probably spending most of my time hanging out at AltConf. But I don't know if I would go this year. I probably wouldn't, but
Yeah.
it's still pretty early, and I have no idea. I haven't seen anything about whether AltConf or Layers or any of those people are going to try to do something. I'll bet there'll be some people that just ad hoc go and hang out somewhere by the famous San Jose drainage ditch.
Yeah, under the bridge,
Probably.
down by the lake.
It's been too long. Over 2 years now since they've had a live event. 3 years.
Yeah, almost 3 years.
Jeff, do you have any thoughts with this short announcement here? It's a few hours.
I was not surprised that it's going to be a virtual event again. I mean, despite what some people think or want to believe, we're in the middle of a pandemic that hasn't ended.
No.
So, a company like Apple, they're wise to take that into account. The part that did surprise me was the announcement that there would be the smaller thing on one day for a select group, which I presume for that you'll have to get into a lottery or something, or know someone who knows someone.
Yeah.
And So you show up and say something like, "Don't you know that I know Kelly Gumont?" And then like, "Oh, right. Please, we're sorry, Mr. Gammett. Come on in."
And it's interesting, I think, that at least the announcement, and we have very little, but the announcement seemed to indicate that small group would be developers. They didn't say anything that I've heard about press. You'd think a small group would be they'd want press people, but that's not what they're saying so far.
Yeah, my expectation is that it will be the people that are winning the various awards that they're giving out, and then select developers, and that's it.
Yeah.
Speaking of Kelly Gamond, it made it. Glad you're here. How are you, Kelly?
Not too bad. How about you all?
Doing great. Glad you're here.
Excellent.
And a good segue here. What do you think? The few hours we've just found out that WW has been announced for this year.
Well, I'm glad they're continuing and with the online model and dabbling in the in-person piece. So, like Jeff was saying, I anticipate, like, I can probably tell you who the people are that'll be in the room. Like, if I was, if I had to ballpark it, kind of the back of the envelope math says, the design award folks would be there, and then maybe the people who are working on the stuff that they're going to unveil in the beta. If there's a new iteration of Metal, we'll get a couple game devs and things like that. So that's sort of what I presume is going to happen while it's there. And it's not, if it's only the number of people that can fit in the amphitheater, then it's not going to be a ton of people, and it's not going to be like a whole thing. It's going to be more on the Apple Press event end of the scale than it is the actual dub end of the scale. So, but I'm glad they're considering, having people come back in person. But I do think as a spectator, it's sort of entertaining that this is sort of, the announcement is coming right around the same time that Apple has started saying that people are going to have to start coming back in the office. Which is hot on the heels of Apple releasing a video about a whole bunch of people who quit their jobs because they were all being told they had to go into the office and they didn't want to. So I sort of think it's an interesting set of pieces, an interesting set of data points out of Apple. You ain't got to be in an office, and then we're going to bring everybody back to the office, and then we're going to see if anybody wants to show up and hang out in Steve Jobs Amphitheater for the afternoon. So
yeah. Oh, irony! You taste of a tree fruit.
I'm not sure it's going to be in the Steve Jobs Theater.
I thought that's what it said. Maybe I'm
looking at it right now.
Okay.
It says, in addition to the online conference, Apple will host a special day for developers and students. So that's what it's specifically called out.
Right.
At Apple Park on June 6th to watch the keynote and State of the Union videos together. Okay. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's inside. They could do it like in the middle of the rain.
Arch.
No?
Yeah, by the Rainbow Arch or something. And it does say, it is saying to watch the videos together. So they're specifically saying there's not going to be any live component to that. So they're not going to have any Well, I thought you were saying maybe there would be developers on stage, or maybe I misunderstood you.
No, I had thought because I read through when I got the email earlier, I sort of read through it and went, oh, huh. And then that was it. So I didn't look at it after that. So yeah, I did think like if they were going to have any sort of live component, that might be why it would make sense to get people together in person.
This edition of Mac Voices is supported by our Patreon subscribers and Mac Voices After Dark. Ever wonder what happens before the Mac Voices live shows? Or what happens when the show ends or after the live feed closes? That's where Mac Voices After Dark comes in. If you are a Patreon supporter at any level, you get access to the video of our off-camera conversations. Uncensored, unedited, and always off the wall. It's a small thank you to our Patreon supporters who want to peek behind the curtain. Become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/MacVoices. And thanks to everyone who supports the show.
I think it'll be inside, because you're not going to be able to, because most of the big events like the keynote and the awards and all the rest of that is going to happen basically during the day. And I don't know how or what kind of screen you could put up that everyone would be able to see it on the outside of the room or
That's
outside of a building.
Totally doable. Look at Google I/O or many sports events.
No,
Yeah,
I don't know.
They can put something in the arch.
But Google I/O specifically, that's all outside, and they have really powerful, screens nowadays that will work outside. So I'm not going to say it is going to be outside, but it's interesting that they just said Apple Park and didn't say at the Steve Jobs Theater when they could have. But I may be reading too much into it. But they're sort of,
remember
if nothing else, they're leaving themselves open to.
It'll be in the cafeteria.
Remember the good old days where we used to worry more about the features they would add rather than whether this was going to be inside or outside?
Yeah.
Well, you did have a
No, I
spot
don't
on
remember those
prediction,
days.
Warren. You did have a spot on prediction of they're going to probably release iOS and macOS, right?
Yes. That's my guess. Maybe even TV and HomePod thing too.
That is just crazy talk, Warren.
Maybe
I think it's going to be an all hardware event.
Yeah. All I can tell you is WWDC is the only time I remember, or maybe once or twice, where Guy had a guest speaker at my Mac podcast, because it was one WWDC is the only time I ever went. We did a podcast together from there, and you interviewed me.
From WWDC? I've never been at WWDC.
You were home. We did a podcast.
The part that I love
almost
is
like we're
that
doing now.
Guy has no idea.
Well, what else is new?
First of all, Warren, how dare you? Second of all, Guy was dead at the time.
Yeah,
he was. Yeah, what?
I was uploaded.
Was that? so I was having a podcast with your uploaded ghost,
the ghost of Guy Serve.
or I could have been just crazy drunk or high, and I imagined the whole podcast. But
or maybe I was crazy drunk and high, and I imagined the whole thing. Maybe I'm imagining you right here.
Group hallucination.
Even before it was legal, they had good.
I'm
they
sure
had the
you
good
could-
stuff in California. I mean, who's to say?
They had good stuff in Florida, from what I've heard.
Right, so what I'm getting out of this is that I'm Guy's fantasy.
Okay, guys.
Anyway,
let's go ahead and move on.
There's audio evidence of it, so go, if you don't believe me, go back to yours and find it, and there will be an episode of what was it? When did we start even talking? Has it been 4 or 5 years already?
Time flies. Next story I wanted to talk about tonight was Elon Musk. Elon Musk bought 9% of Twitter stock as he pressures the company on free speech. News article here on Ars Technica. I thought this was interesting to see that he bought 9.2% of the Google, Twitter stock.
He's the highest, the biggest stockholder.
Was it 73
That's
billion?
right.
Is that 73 billion shares or 73 million? No, it's got to be 73 billion shares of
Did
stock.
I give him more characters to type in?
Worth over $2.89 billion. So of course the stock went up.
And he's already made $750 million.
Yeah, he could sell the stock right now and make a ton of money. Oh my god!
So seems like his motivation here is free speech. He thinks that there isn't free speech on Twitter. Isn't there free speech on Twitter? People speak-
I don't think he's really said anything about any future plans. He did put out a poll asking people that followed him whether or not that Twitter adhered to free speech principles or something like that.
Right.
But as of yet, I don't think he's done much of anything except laugh at people freaking out that he bought that much Twitter.
No, I just read an article, and the thing that struck me was the way he massaged the way he spoke about he could say what he wanted to say. Reminded me of a lot of Trump saying that he was going to do his own social network when Twitter got rid of him.
So
It was like, hey,
Well, he
we got the
did,
money,
but nobody
we'll do our
uses
own.
it.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Well, I feel compelled to put in here what I'm very interested in what it is he thinks free speech entails. Did he go spend bajillions of dollars, give or take, on Twitter because people talk smack about him on the internet? Because a lot of times that's what people mean when they say free speech. When somebody is violating my free speech, I said something somebody else didn't like and they called me out about it. And so, free speech. But in the United States, the definition of free speech, as in what's protected by the First Amendment, is you can say whatever thing you want to say and the government cannot make you disappear. If you are an a-hole and people don't want to listen to you, that has nothing to do with free speech or the First Amendment or any of those things that people like to screech about when they go be a-holes in public. And then we can say a-hole, right? As long as I don't say out the whole thing.
It's a private network. They can do pretty much whatever they want.
Then,
Right.
So, it's like a house. If somebody comes in my house and says things in my house that I don't like, I can tell them to leave and I can change the locks and I can make sure they never come back. But that has nothing to do with the First Amendment. That's because it's my house. The end.
Free speech, and Kelly has to worry if she could say a word on this social network. There's no free speech, right? So on Google, you're worried about saying, you're worried about cursing on
the First Amendment.
No, I was worried about whether or not anybody was going to have to bleep me because I want to make sure I'm trying to make other people's jobs as easy as possible when it's not my show to edit.
Because
that's all.
Because YouTube has.
Oh no, it had nothing to do with YouTube.
You can say whatever you want on YouTube.
You can say whatever you want on YouTube.
Yeah, people do it all the time.
I'm trying to be nice because MacVoices is generally
Chuck
a
has
G-rated
standards.
show, and so I'm trying to play in.
Does Chuck have standards?
Yes.
Here I am.
So who's rating it? So YouTube does if we curse here.
This
YouTube
has nothing to
doesn't
do with YouTube. YouTube could care less what we're actually saying on here.
Is a podcast in general,
as long as
when
it's
you
not
publish
copyright protected music.
Okay.
Right.
Hold
so
on.
Google doesn't like
Careful what you
copyright
sing.
Okay, all of you, do not make me
Kelly's
snap
turn.
and
Kelly's turn.
point. I will do it, and you do not want to know what happens if I do.
All right, let her get her things
Jim,
going.
copyrighted music is beside the point. They mostly use an algorithm for that. Warren, the YouTube thing is beside the point. I'm not censoring myself because of YouTube. I'm censoring myself because I'm friends with Chuck, and I want to make sure he doesn't have to do a bunch of edits. The end. That's me being
stop
nice to
the edit. I'm not saying, but the edits
The
for
end.
what? For who?
She just explained it, Warren.
No,
Chuck.
Let me try again with smaller words for Warren. I'm trying not to swear so Chuck doesn't have to edit out the swears because Chuck doesn't like swears on his show. When we get to After Dark, I will tell you what the swears are. If
This
you
is
need to
just a
know in the
question.
meantime,
I have
look up
just a
George
question.
Carlin's 7 Dirty Words.
no,
I just have a
hold on,
question. The question.
We're gonna- I'm gonna-
Stop. The question is, some podcasts you have to label it as having curses, and some
This
podcasts you don't.
doesn't
No,
have
it
anything
has
to
to
do
do
with
with
that.
kids. Whether or not your content is intended for
So-
children.
So between.
So let me get back to my point.
Stop for a
because-
second. Stop. Just-
Warren,
fine.
Okay.
Warren, hold on. Go ahead, Kelly.
Go ahead.
So
Kelly and then Jim.
if Warren, if here's the thing, if Elon Musk went and bought a bunch of Twitter because he's mad that people are talking smack about him, this is not going to solve that problem. And if what he's really worried about is that people are not allowed to say exactly what they want to say on Twitter, I highly encourage him to start an account with a woman's photo and present himself as female and let his DMs be open and wait. The
Okay,
end.
Jim, go ahead. I heard something to say.
Well, I guess I was going to say YouTube can and does censor people, and that's totally legit. What the First Amendment says is Congress shall pass no law abridging free speech.
The government can't come for
The
you.
government
The
can't
end.
do it, but a newspaper can do it. YouTube can do it. Any kind of private, as Kelly can do it in her house. That has nothing to do with the First Amendment. Newspapers wouldn't print anything that anybody said ever. What the First Amendment says is the government cannot prevent the newspaper from printing something. That's what the First Amendment says. But the editor can sure prevent, or the shareholder, the owners of the paper can decide what's going to be printed in the paper. And, Rupert Murdoch can decide what's on Fox News. That's perfectly valid.
Right. All right. Because this is getting very volatile, I have two more points here. Webb in the chat said, and being below the 10% threshold of Twitter, he avoids all kinds of SEC regulations. That seems about right. And then Jeff, you'll have the last word on this topic when we move on.
Okay. I think that Elon wants to have a bigger stake in the control over Twitter. So he bought up an A-load of stock and got himself on the board. And now he continues forward with his Tony Stark wannabe life.
Okay.
And apparently there's a deal that he can't buy over 14%. That was part of the deal of him being on the board. And he's not allowed to until he's off the board for 90 days.
Yeah. So he did 9%.
Next time on Mac Voices, this Mac Voices Live panel takes on the Wise camera software debacle and also digs into some things that may change subscriptions on the App Store. That's next time on Mac Voices, and I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.